She said it while ironing a champagne-colored dress for her sister's wedding, like she was discussing whether, not ending a life we had spent 2.5 years building. My parents think you're a downgrade from my ex. I don't want to make them uncomfortable. For a second I honestly thought I had misheard her. I was standing in the doorway of our bedroom with my tie in one hand and the garment bag with my suit in the other, smiling like an idiot, ready to ask whether the navy or the burgundy pocket square looked better. I had been thinking about table seating, traffic, whether I should get her coffee in the morning before we left, whether her mother would finally stop looking at me like I was some kind of temporary substitute and actually admit I was good for her daughter. Instead, I got that. Not the guest list is complicated. Not my mom is being weird. Not even I'm stressed and I don't want to deal with introductions. A downgrade. From her ex. As if love was a software update and somehow I was the cheaper version. I remember the iron hissing against the fabric. I remember her eyes staying on the dress instead of on me. I remember how weirdly calm I felt, the way people talk about hearing a crash before they feel the pain. I said, I see. That was all. She let out a little breath, almost relieved, like I had made something easier for her. That's the part that stayed with me. Not the insult. Not even the comparison. The relief. She had expected a scene. She had prepared herself for me to argue, maybe to ask questions, maybe to defend myself. And when I didn't, when I just stood there and accepted the information, her shoulders loosened. She thought I was taking it well. She had no idea I had just stopped being her boyfriend. She just hadn't caught up yet. My name is Evan. I'm 34. I work in operations for a regional healthcare network, which is a boring way of saying I'm the person companies call when everything is on fire and they need someone calm enough to put the fire out without making a speech about it. I build systems, fix leaks, find waste, smooth chaos, and make sure the important things keep running. I'm good at it because I've never been in love with noise. I've never needed drama to feel alive. I like plans. I like receipts. I like having gas in the car before the warning light comes on. I like knowing that if somebody I care about leans on me, I won't move. That used to be one of the things Nina said she loved most about me. Nina was 29 when we met. Funny, beautiful, too sharp for her own good, and exhausted in a way that had seeped into her bones. The kind of exhausted that doesn't come from work. The kind that comes from being taught to confuse instability with romance for so long that your nervous system forgets what peace feels like. She had just gotten out of a 4-year disaster with a guy named Jace. Jace was one of those men who always sounds more impressive in summary than in reality. If you let Nina tell it the way she told it early on, he was magnetic, ambitious, connected, spontaneous, impossible to pin down. If you translated all that into plain English, he was a 32-year-old nightclub promoter who bounced between opportunities, borrowed money like it was a personality trait, cheated when he got bored, lied when he got caught, and had convinced Nina that being chosen by him was a compliment she needed to earn over and over. When I met her, Jace had just left her for a fitness influencer from Scottsdale who called herself a spiritual investor. Nina was humiliated, in debt, behind on rent, crying in office bathroom stalls, and somehow still defending him in fragments. That's the thing about people who survive emotional chaos for too long. Even after the building is ashes, they still talk about the architecture. We met through her cousin Melanie. Melanie worked in admin at one of our clinics and decided I was too stable to be single, which, in hindsight, should probably have warned me what role I was about to be cast in. Our first date was nothing spectacular. Tacos, 1 margarita each, and 3 hours of conversation that felt like nothing I had to perform. She laughed with her whole face. She admitted embarrassing things without polishing them. She told me she felt stupid for how much she had tolerated with Jace. I didn't try to be profound. I just listened. At the end of the night, when I walked her to her car, she looked at me and said, "You're very calm." It's weird. I smiled and asked, "Good weird or bad weird?" She said, "I'm not used to men who make me feel safe on the first date. Usually it takes longer for the red flags to show up." That should have sounded flattering. It did. At the time. Now I hear something else in it. Some people mean safe the way others mean valuable. Some people mean it the way people describe a pair of shoes they wear when it rains. The first year with Nina was good. I won't rewrite history just because I know how it ended. A lot of it was genuinely good. She was trying. I was happy. We built routines. Saturday coffee runs. Grocery trips where she wandered and impulse bought candles while I compared prices on olive oil. Sunday dinners with my sister and her kids. Weeknight takeout on the couch when both of us were too drained to cook. There were small, quiet intimacies I thought would eventually harden into permanence. I helped her in ways I didn't keep score of at the time because that's what you do when you think you're building a life, not financing an exit. Her credit was wrecked from covering Jace's temporary cash flow issues. I helped her make a payoff plan. Her car loan had a predatory interest rate because she had signed anything the dealership put in front of her after Jace promised to handle the payments and then vanished. I refinanced it with her and co-signed because the difference in monthly payment gave her room to breathe. She wanted to go back and finish the communications degree she had abandoned halfway through, so I covered more of the rent for 8 months while she took extra classes and an internship. I proofread her assignments. Helped her redo her resume. Practiced interview questions with her at the kitchen table. Talked her through panic attacks before presentations. Drove her to class once when her car battery died and she sat in the passenger seat apologizing every 10 seconds while I told her to breathe. Did I feel resentful then? No. Not even a little. Because she seemed grateful. Because she told me I had changed her life. Because when you love somebody and they look at you like you're the first dry place they've stood in for years, you don't think, this is temporary. You think, maybe this is what being needed and loved at the same time feels like. Her parents were another story. Her father, Richard, liked me right away. Richard was a retired electrician with a dry sense of humor and the kind of handshake that made you feel assessed but not unwelcome. He appreciated competence. I helped him install a new router once, and after that I was permanently upgraded in his eyes. We watched football together. We talked tools, traffic, old trucks, mortgage rates, and whatever insane thing the city council was doing that month. He was practical. He liked men who showed up. Her mother, Denise, was polished in a way that always made me slightly careful. Not warm, exactly. Not rude, either. Just one of those people who can make a compliment sound like an audition note. "Oh, Evan is so dependable," she would say, smiling over the rim of a wine glass, as if that was nice but not thrilling. "Evan has such a steady energy. Nina really needs someone grounding." Those things sound fine if you only read the words. But tone can smuggle a whole hierarchy inside a sentence. What Denise meant was not, "He's wonderful." What Denise meant was, after the exciting one broke her, this one appears functional. The first time I understood that Jace was still somehow in the room when I wasn't, it was at a Christmas dinner about 10 months into the relationship. Somebody had brought up travel, and Denise laughed and said, "Well, whatever else you say about Jace, that man did know how to create a memory." Nina laughed too. Quick. Reflexive. Not because it was funny. Because old habits survive even when respect doesn't. I said nothing. Richard muttered, "Yeah, like unpaid tabs and parking tickets," and that ended it. But I noticed Nina went quiet afterward. On the drive home, she stared out the window and said, "Mom just likes big personalities." I kept my eyes on the road. Does she? She thinks ordinary means settling. That was one of those little sentences that seems small when you hear it, but later you realize it contained a whole warning. I asked, "And what do you think?" She reached across the center console and squeezed my wrist. "I think ordinary is underrated." I wanted that to be true. Maybe part of her even believed it when she said it. The second year changed slowly enough that if you were inside it, you could pretend not to notice. Nina finished her degree. Then she landed a job in brand partnerships for a luxury hospitality group. Good salary. Stylish office. Aggressive culture. Everyone there seemed permanently lit by ring lights and rooftop events. Her new coworkers talked about energy and curation and presence as if they were discussing oxygen. She started dressing differently. Nothing wrong with that. She looked great. More polished, more expensive, more deliberately effortless. The changes didn't bother me at first. I was proud of her. I'd watched her claw her way back from a version of herself that apologized for existing. Then the little comments started. Not open insults. That would have been easier. No, these were cleaner than that. Sharper. Denser. We'd leave a work event of hers and she'd say, you know, when people ask what you do, maybe don't lead with process optimization. It sounds clinical. I'd laugh and say, it is clinical. I work in healthcare operations. She'd smile in a way that meant she wasn't joking. I know. I'm just saying there are sexier ways to phrase things. Another time we were at dinner with two of her coworkers and one of their boyfriends, some venture capital guy who wore white sneakers with a navy suit and kept talking about velocity like it was a sacred concept. On the drive home she said, you could talk more about your bigger picture impact instead of the spreadsheets. I said, the spreadsheets are the bigger picture impact. She sighed. See? That's what I mean. And then there were the social comparisons. Chloe's boyfriend surprised her with a last-minute Napa weekend. Jules and Aaron just booked Tulum with 12 hours notice. Do you ever miss being more spontaneous? I'd remind her we took trips. We did dinners. We went to concerts. We had a life. But in her new world, planning had become a character flaw. Everything had to feel impulsive, even if it was funded by credit cards and staged for Instagram. The job changed her, but I don't think it created the problem. It just gave the problem better lighting. Because the truth was, Nina had started getting stronger again, prettier again, more validated again. And as her life improved, I noticed something that scared me once I had the courage to name it. When she needed help, she reached for me. When she felt confident, she drifted toward people who looked more like the story she wanted to tell about herself. I was essential in private and forgettable in public. That kind of realization doesn't arrive in one moment. It accumulates. The first time she openly made me feel cheap was over a watch. It sounds stupid, but small objects carry big meanings in these kinds of relationships. We were getting ready for a fundraiser gala tied to her company. I wore my navy suit and the stainless steel watch my grandfather left me. It isn't flashy. It's an old Omega, clean face, brushed metal, understated. I love it because he wore it every day for 30 years and because when I was 16 he told me a decent watch should feel like responsibility on your wrist. Nina looked at it and said, you know, for these things, you could maybe wear something a little more statement. I said, like what? She shrugged while fastening an earring. Something that says more. I looked down at the watch. It says the time. She rolled her eyes. You're impossible. No. I wasn't impossible. I just wasn't playing the same game she was. That became the pattern. Every practical thing about me slowly got relabeled as a deficit. Careful became dull. Reliable became predictable. Grounded became uninspiring. Self-respect became rigidity anytime it interfered with whatever atmosphere she wanted to produce. And because I loved her, and because I had spent a lot of that relationship in helper mode, I kept translating these things into the most generous version possible. She's stressed. She's adjusting to a new environment. She doesn't mean it that way. She's just under pressure. She's insecure. She's working through old patterns. Do you know what generosity becomes in the wrong relationship? Silence that other people spend. By the time her younger sister Olivia's wedding approached, Nina had become almost feverish about appearances. Olivia was marrying into one of those old local families that own things quietly. Country club without saying country club. The kind of people whose wealth is tucked into land and surnames and board memberships. Nina was maid of honor. Denise was treating the event like a diplomatic summit. Every detail had to signal that their side of the family was polished, elevated, effortless, socially fluent. There were calls every night. Seating charts. Dress fittings. Vendor drama. Menu complaints. Flower revisions. Denise speaking in the tense, strained tone of a woman who considered ordinary disappointment a public scandal. Nina soaked all of it up. I tried to help. I picked up a last-minute alteration. Dropped off welcome bags at the hotel block. Fixed a spreadsheet issue with RSVP meal counts when Olivia accidentally duplicated half the guest list. I even spent my lunch break one day driving across town to pick up the custom-printed escort cards because the calligrapher had gotten stuck in traffic and Nina was on the verge of tears. She hugged me in the kitchen that night and said, I seriously don't know what I'd do without you. At the time, that felt like love. Now I hear dependency. 3 days before the wedding, I got my suit back from the tailor. I had gone with a dark midnight blue suit, hand-finished, sharp but not loud. More expensive than I usually spend, but I wanted to look right beside her. I wanted her to feel proud walking in with me. I wanted Denise to see me and, for once, have nothing to calibrate. I remember stepping into the bedroom holding the jacket up against my shoulders. Nina was steaming one of the bridesmaid dresses, her phone propped beside the sink, texts from her family popping up so fast the screen never really slept. I said, quick question. Blue tie or silver? She barely looked. Blue. I laughed. That confident? Now she looked. Really looked. Not at me the way someone looks at a man she loves. At me the way a stylist looks at a rack they've already decided doesn't fit the event. She said, it's fine. I stood there a second. Fine? It's just very safe. That word again. I said, safe how? She set the steamer down too hard. Evan, please don't make me do this right now. A cold sensation slid down my back. Do what? She looked at the dress, not at me. Have an uncomfortable conversation. It's amazing how fast a room can change temperature when someone says that. Suddenly every object around you feels like it's waiting. I put the jacket on the bed and said, okay. Have it. That's when she said it. My parents think you're a downgrade from my ex. I don't want to make them uncomfortable. There are moments in life when humiliation is so precise it almost clarifies you. I stared at her, waiting for the correction. The laugh. The that came out wrong. The I'm sorry, I'm stressed. Instead she kept going, because once people decide they're morally justified, they become incredibly articulate. She didn't mean it in a mean way, Nina said quickly, which is how people always begin when they're about to describe something mean. It's just. Jace had a certain presence. Even Dad admits he was memorable. I actually laughed once. Not because it was funny. Because the alternative was saying something uglier than the room could hold. Memorable? She crossed her arms. Can you not do that tone? What tone? That superior one. I looked at her. I'm trying to understand how your ex being a dishonest man-child somehow makes him the gold standard for wedding guests. You're twisting it. No, Nina. I'm trying very hard not to. She exhaled hard through her nose, the way she did when she wanted me to feel unreasonable before I'd even finished speaking. It's not just about him. It's about energy. My mom thinks you judge everything. She says you're nice, but you make people feel observed. Observed. That was a new one. I said, I am observing this, yes. She ignored that. She thinks you're reserved. She thinks with this crowd, with Oliver's family, it's just going to be a weird mismatch. And honestly, after what she said, I started thinking maybe it would be easier if I just went alone. There it was. The rail ask hidden inside the diagnosis. I asked, very evenly, are you uninviting me to your sister's wedding? She winced, not because she felt guilty, but because I had used the plain language. I'm trying to protect you. No, you're trying to protect the room from me. That's not fair. Isn't it? She finally looked me in the eye, and what I saw there chilled me more than the insult. Not cruelty. Embarrassment. She was embarrassed by me. Not by anything I had done. By what I represented. Stability. Predictability. A lack of sparkle. I had become the beige truth under the gold filter of the life she wanted to display. Nina, I said quietly, do you agree with them? She took too long to answer. That was the answer. Then she said, I think you're wonderful. I just think sometimes you don't understand how you come across. That one landed harder than downgrade. Because downgrade was Denise's word. This one was Nina's. I stood there for a long moment. A relationship can survive a lot of things. Stress. Money problems. Bad timing. Grief. Family tension. Different habits. But once one person starts seeing the other as socially inconvenient, love is already on life support. I said, I see. She blinked. That's it? What else is there to say? I mean, she shifted her weight. I thought you'd be more upset. I'm sure that's disappointing. Again with the tone. I picked up the suit jacket and hung it carefully over the closet door. She said, softer now, Evan, please don't punish me for being honest. That sentence was almost impressive. She insults me, uninvites me, compares me unfavorably to a man who treated her like an accessory, and somehow she frames herself as the brave one for telling the truth. People do that when they want the moral credit of honesty without paying the relational cost of betrayal. I said, I'm not punishing you. She relaxed a little. Okay. I'm listening. That satisfied her. That's what still amazes me. She wanted compliance, not resolution. She didn't want to work through anything. She wanted me to absorb the insult and stay emotionally available. She walked over, touched my arm, and said, thank you for understanding. I just have so much on me right now. Olivia is losing it, Mom is impossible, the seating chart is a nightmare. I can't also manage feelings. Mine, she meant. Not hers. Mine. I nodded once. You should focus on the wedding. I will. I hope it goes exactly the way you want. She kissed my cheek like she had solved something. Then she picked up her phone and went right back to texting. I left the bedroom before she could see my face. That night, she packed for the hotel where the bridal party was staying. She was leaving the next afternoon. She moved around the apartment with frantic purpose, zipping garment bags, charging her phone, checking lists, talking half to me and half to herself. At one point she said, can you grab my nude heels from the hall closet? I brought them over and she said, thank you, babe, in the same tone she used when I handed her the salt. I watched her and understood, maybe for the first time completely, what role I had been serving for a long time. I wasn't her chosen future. I was her stable present until the future she preferred became available. The next afternoon, she wheeled her suitcase to the front door. She looked beautiful. Hair done, nails perfect, makeup soft and expensive. Wedding week glow. She kissed me quickly and said, I'll call you tonight if I can. I said, don't worry about me. Enjoy the weekend. She smiled with obvious relief. You're the best. Then she left. I waited exactly 2 minutes, mostly because I wanted the hallway to clear. Then I went to the window. Our apartment overlooked the street and the rideshare lane below the front awning. Her car was staying in the garage because she planned to drink and because Denise had arranged transportation. I watched the black SUV pull up. I watched the driver load her suitcase. And then I watched a man in a camel-colored jacket get out from the back seat to open the door for her. He moved with the same loose, practiced swagger I'd seen once before in old photos and once in person from across a bar when Nina and I had been less than 3 months together and she had turned her body away like spotting him was an inconvenience she did not want to explain. Jace. Even from 3 floors up, some people are unmistakable. He leaned in, said something. She laughed. Not polite laughter. Not tense laughter. Real laughter. The kind that belongs to unfinished things. I stood there very still until the SUV disappeared into traffic. Now, I want to be honest about something. People love to imagine that revenge begins in rage. Mine didn't. It began in refrigeration. Everything in me went cold. Cold is useful. Cold lets you think. I turned away from the window and looked at the apartment. The couch I bought. The dining table I paid for when our old one cracked and she said, "Let's wait a month," and I said, "No, let's just get a decent one." The television mounted on the wall. The coffee machine. The Sonos speakers. The router and mesh system. The kitchen island stools. The mattress. The desk in the second bedroom she used for remote days. The linen set in the hall closet. The air purifier. The car insurance folder. The utilities binder. Do you know what betrayal does sometimes? It puts labels on everything. I wasn't looking at household objects anymore. I was looking at all the invisible ways I had been holding her life up while she auditioned cooler narratives in nicer lighting. I got a duffel bag from the closet. Then 2 suitcases. I am not a dramatic man. I didn't break anything. I didn't leave a threat. I didn't touch a single thing that belonged to her. I simply did a clean inventory of what was mine, what was shared but paid for entirely by me, what accounts were in my name, and what parts of her comfort existed because I had built and maintained them. If that sounds unromantic, good. Romance had already been dragged out of the apartment by a man in a camel jacket. First I packed my documents, laptop, work monitor, tablet, chargers, toiletries, shoes, clothes, and the watch box from my dresser. Then I emptied the lockbox in the closet. Passport. Tax file. Birth certificate. Emergency cash. Then I unplugged the television. The wall behind it looked oddly bare. Honester. I boxed the speakers. Wrapped the coffee machine. Took the router, modem, and extenders. Logged out of every streaming service tied to my email. Moved my desk chair and office setup. Pulled my name off the shared grocery app, the utilities autopay schedule, the couple's calendar we hadn't updated in months except for things she needed me to do. I called the electric company and scheduled the account transfer for Monday morning. I did the same for internet, water, and the renter's insurance policy. The lease had 3 months left. My attorney cousin later told me I had several ways I could have handled it. At the time, I kept it simple. I emailed the property manager, explained I was vacating due to relationship dissolution, confirmed I would continue paying my portion through the notice period, and requested that future communication be copied to both tenants separately. It was clinical. It was clear. It was more respect than the relationship had just shown me. Around 6 o'clock, I took one last walk through the apartment. Her things were still everywhere. Throw blankets she bought because influencers kept recommending them. Trays of skincare products. A giant framed print she insisted made the living room look editorial. Shoes lined beneath the entry bench. Candles on every flat surface. Her perfume on the bathroom sink. Her robe over the bedroom chair. But the space had changed. It no longer looked shared. It looked dependent. I left my key fob on the kitchen counter next to the bowl where we used to dump receipts and spare change. No note. A note invites debate. I was past debate. By 7:15, I was checked into a business hotel 15 minutes away with my bags in the corner and a bourbon on the side table. I hadn't turned my phone off yet. Part of me wanted to. Part of me wanted to witness the first fracture. At 7:38, my phone lit up. Richard. I let it ring twice before answering. Hey, Richard. Evan, thank God. His voice was wrong immediately. Breathless. Tight. Are you all right? I sat up straighter. Yes. Why? A pause. Then, you're not at Memorial? I looked at the glass in my hand. No. Another pause, thicker this time. She told us you collapsed. There are sentences that don't make sense the first time you hear them, not because the words are unclear but because the lie inside them is so bold your brain rejects it on contact. I said, what? Richard lowered his voice, and I could hear bass and chatter behind him, reception noise bleeding through the line. Nina said you had some kind of episode. Dizzy spell, chest pain, maybe a seizure, I don't know. She said you made her come anyway because you didn't want Olivia's day ruined. Denise has been telling people you're under observation. I stepped outside because something about it felt off. Then I called your number just to check. I closed my eyes. She hadn't just uninvited me. She had fabricated a medical emergency to cover my absence and explain Jace's presence. That takes a level of shamelessness you don't usually meet all at once. It arrives hidden in smaller permissions. Small lies. Small justifications. Small acts of self-protection until one day the person can build a whole false catastrophe and wear it like a corsage. I asked, is Jace there? Richard made a sound halfway between a curse and a laugh. He came in with her. There it was. Confirmation doesn't always hurt. Sometimes it steadies you. I said, I thought so. Richard went silent for half a second. You knew? I saw him pick her up. Jesus Christ. How bad is it? He exhaled hard. Your seat card was still at the table. Denise nearly swallowed her own tongue when he sat down there. Olivia looked like she wanted to kill somebody. Nina said Jace was only there because she needed support after dropping you at the hospital. That bought her about 15 minutes. Then he started talking. Talking how? Like Jace. Loud. Slick. He tried to charm Oliver's uncle at the bar. Then he asked Olivia's father-in-law what line of work he was in and immediately launched into some pitch about hospitality ventures and nightlife branding. Denise is radioactive. I'd leave her in a field if I could. And Nina's been crying in the ladies' room every 20 minutes. I listened without interrupting. This is the part people always get wrong about revenge. The point is not to create chaos. The point is to stop protecting people from the consequences of the chaos they chose. Richard said my name again, softer now. Son, what happened? That word, son, nearly got me. Not because I was sentimental. Because it reminded me that somebody in that family had seen me clearly, and I had liked him enough that part of this hurt wasn't just losing Nina. It was losing the version of that family I had hoped might eventually become mine. I said, very calmly, yesterday she told me her parents thought I was a downgrade from her ex. She said she didn't want to make anyone uncomfortable at the wedding, so I shouldn't come. I said okay. Then today I watched Jace pick her up. Richard didn't say anything for a full 3 seconds. Then he said, voice low and lethal, I never said that. I figured. Denise says stupid things, but she never told Nina not to bring you. Hell, I argued with your future mother-in-law for 20 minutes last month because she said you were too reserved. I told her reserved men build houses and chaotic men borrow against them. That almost made me smile. He continued, angrier now, I've never liked that little fraud. He still owes me $600 from some fake event deposit story. If he came in thinking he could sit in your place and smile in photos, he picked the wrong night. There was movement on his end, muffled voices, then Richard lowering the phone again. Nina told your mother you were on a cardiac monitor, he said. Do you understand that? She had your supposed medical emergency folded into the table conversation like garnish. The part of me that had still been trying to preserve some tiny excuse for her quietly died right there. Not because she brought the X. Because she needed me erased elegantly. I asked, can I give you some advice? Please. Don't call me back down there. Don't tell me to come save it. Don't ask me to manage whatever this becomes. He let out a rough breath. I wasn't going to. I moved out. That landed hard. You what? I packed my things and left. Another pause. Then, quietly, Nina has no idea? No. Richard muttered something that sounded like good. I sat back against the headboard. He said, she's about to. Probably. Evan. I'm sorry. I believed him. That made it worse and better at the same time. I know, I said. Tell Olivia I'm sorry I'm not there. None of this is on her. I will. And Richard? Yeah? If Nina says this is a misunderstanding, don't let her hide in that word. She made a choice. Several choices. His voice went flat. Understood. We ended the call. I placed my phone on the table and stared at it for a long time. No triumph. Not yet. Mostly relief. A terrible, clarifying relief. When somebody finally behaves badly enough that you no longer owe them the labor of interpretation, something in you unclenches. I slept surprisingly well that night. I woke the next morning to 17 missed calls and more texts than the preview would show without opening the thread. I didn't open anything. I showered. Ordered breakfast. Went for a run along the river. Sat on a bench in my workout clothes with a paper cup of coffee and watched a father teach his little kid how to skip stones. The air was cold and clean. It felt absurd that somewhere in the same city Nina was probably trying to construct a version of events where I had somehow humiliated her. By Sunday afternoon curiosity won. Not enough to answer. Just enough to read. The text progression was almost art. 1:12 a.m. Where are you? 1:19 a.m. Why are you not home? 1:31 a.m. Did you seriously leave in the middle of this weekend? 1:44 a.m. Dad says you told him I uninvited you. Why would you do that to me tonight of all nights? 2:03 a.m. Pick up the phone. 2:17 a.m. You took the TV? 2:19 a.m. Evan, what is wrong with you? 2:26 a.m. The internet is out too. 2:40 a.m. This is actually insane. 8:11 a.m. You embarrassed me in front of my entire family. 8:43 a.m. Mom is furious and Dad won't speak to me. 10:02 a.m. Can we just talk like adults? 12:15 p.m. I made a mistake. 2:08 p.m. Jace just showed up, okay? I didn't plan everything the way it looked. 2:16 p.m. Please answer. 5:42 p.m. I'm at the apartment and your key is on the counter. 6:01 p.m. Did you really move out? 8:54 p.m. I need to explain. Monday 6:13 a.m. Please don't do this. Monday 6:14 a.m. I need you. There it was. The entire collapse. Accusation to anger. Anger to self-defense. Self-defense to minimization. Minimization to explanation. Explanation to panic. Panic to need. I didn't answer a single one. I went to work Monday like nothing had happened. I'm sure people noticed I was quieter than usual, but healthcare operations is one of those jobs where looking grim just makes you seem focused. I spent the day in meetings about staffing ratios, a vendor migration delay, and a billing platform issue in pediatrics. Real problems. Problems with causes and solutions. Problems that did not involve somebody trying to turn cruelty into stress management. At 4:50, my assistant buzzed my extension. "There's a woman here asking for you," she said carefully. I knew. I said, "Tell security I'll handle it." Nina was in the lobby by the coffee kiosk, wearing oversized sunglasses indoors and a cream blazer over black jeans. She looked good from a distance because she always knew how to assemble a silhouette. Up close, she looked like somebody who had slept maybe 2 hours and spent the rest of the night arguing with herself in mirrors. She took off the sunglasses when she saw me. Her eyes were swollen. Good. Not because I wanted her destroyed. Because reality had finally gotten through the filter. "Can we talk?" she asked. I said, "Not here." She nodded too fast. "Okay." Outside. We stepped into the side plaza near the parking structure. People smoked there sometimes, but at that hour it was mostly empty except for a maintenance worker sweeping leaves into a neat irritated pile. Nina turned to me the second the door shut behind us. "What the hell, Evan?" Not hello. Not sorry. Not thank God you're okay after the story I told people. What the hell? I almost admired the instinct. I said, "You found me. Congratulations." Her face tightened. "Don't do that." "Do what?" "Act like this is all on me." I looked at her for a moment, genuinely fascinated. "All?" She pressed her lips together, recalculating. "Fine. Not all. But you leaving in the middle of the wedding weekend? Telling my dad private things? Taking half the apartment? Shutting off services without warning? That was cruel." "Cruel." "Yes." I nodded slowly. "That's a strong word. Want to compare notes?" She looked away first. That told me more than anything she said next. "I was under enormous pressure," she said. "You know how my family is. You know what weddings are like. My mother gets in my head." Olivia was falling apart. Jace texted me Anne. I held up a hand. "You can stop right there." She blinked. "Excuse me?" "The part where stress, your mother, and your ex are all somehow the active agents in your choices. You can skip it." Her expression hardened. "I came here to fix this." "No. You came here because the version you preferred is gone. That is not fair." "Maybe. Still true." A pulse jumped in her neck. Jay said he wanted closure. I laughed once, softly. Of course he did. I thought if I saw him, really saw him, I would finally know I was over it. "So you took him to your sister's wedding." "I didn't take him as a date." "What did you take him as? A study aid?" Her shoulders dropped. "I knew if I told you he'd reached out, you'd react." "You mean I'd notice?" "That's not what I said." "It is." She put both hands over her face for a second, then dragged them down slowly. "He said he was sorry. He said he'd changed. He said he was in a different place and wanted to talk before I got in too deep with someone safe just because safe felt convenient." The word hung there between us like something rotten left in sunlight. I asked, very quietly, "Someone safe?" She shut her eyes. "That's not how I mean." "That's how he meant it." "And you listened?" "No. I just needed to know." And what did you learn? Tears gathered in her eyes immediately, which irritated me more than if she had stayed cold. Because tears are often the final attempt to regain the moral center once the facts go bad. He humiliated me, she whispered. I said nothing. That made her continue. He got drunk at the reception. He flirted with one of Oliver's cousins during cocktail hour. He told my uncle his watch was fake. He asked Olivia's father-in-law if he'd ever considered opening a members-only rooftop concept. At one point he disappeared with a bridesmaid and nobody could find him for 40 minutes. My mother nearly had a stroke. Dad tried to throw him out. Olivia screamed at me in the bathroom. It was a disaster. I looked at her. And there it was again, the same old pattern. Not, I betrayed you. Not, I devalued you. Not, I used your decency against you. Just, the wrong man caused the wrong spectacle and now she wanted the right man to stabilize the fallout. I asked, if he had behaved well, would you be here? She stared at me like I had slapped her. That told me everything. Her voice dropped. That's a disgusting thing to ask. No. It's the only honest question in this conversation. Of course I'd be here. I tilted my head. Would you? Yes. You told me your parents thought I was a downgrade. I was upset. You told your family I had a medical emergency. I panicked. You let your ex sit in my seat. I didn't think. That part one believe. She flinched. For the first time, really flinched. Good. Truth should have edges. She started crying for real then. Not elegant tears. Messy ones. Mascara at the corners. Breath hitching. I messed up, she said. Okay? I messed up. I know that. But you don't just erase 2.5 years because of one horrible weekend. That line would have worked on the older version of me. The one who still confused being needed with being cherished. I said, it wasn't one weekend. She looked up. It was the comments. The comparisons. The embarrassment. The way every practical thing I did for us got translated into some kind of social deficiency. The way you wanted me in private and edited me out in public. The way you kept asking me to understand things that only ever cost me dignity. She whispered, I never meant to hurt you like this. I said, I believe that. Hope flashed across her face. Then I finished. You just thought hurting me was cheaper than disappointing the image you wanted to perform. That hope died so visibly it was almost physical. We stood there a few seconds in the plaza wind. A paper cup rolled across the concrete and caught against the curb. Nina wiped her face and tried another angle. Dad loves you, she said. He's barely speaking to me. That sounds like something you should work out with your dad. Mom is blaming me for making the family look unstable. Again. Not my pain. Her consequences. She says Oliver's family thinks we're trashy now. I almost smiled. The honesty was getting closer. You're worried about optics, I said. No, I'm worried about everything. Same thing to you right now. That's not fair. I was getting tired of that sentence. Fairness was apparently a concept she only located after humiliation came home to her. She stepped closer. I love you. I wish I could tell you that hurt. Mostly it saddened me. Because by then I finally understood something that had been trying to become visible for months. She loved what I made possible. She loved how regulated I made her life. She loved how my presence lowered the ambient threat level around her. She loved that bills got paid, plans got made, tires got changed, passwords got remembered, parents got handled, panic got absorbed, futures got organized. Did she love me, specifically, as I actually was? The answer had already been spoken in that bedroom over a champagne dress. Downgrade. I said, no. You love relief. Her mouth opened slightly. That's what I gave you. Relief. From debt, from panic, from consequences, from uncertainty, from the emotional weather systems you kept calling passion. But relief isn't the same as reverence. And the first chance you got to choose between reverence and excitement, you told me not to come to the wedding. She shook her head hard. That is not what happened. It is exactly what happened. No, I was confused. You were honest. She stared at me. Then, very softly, she said, "You're being cruel." I nodded. Maybe this is just how I come across. That one landed. She actually recoiled a little, which I'm not proud of, but I'd be lying if I said it didn't satisfy some dark, wounded part of me. She whispered, "So that's it?" I thought about the apartment. The key. The text thread. Richard outside the reception hall sounding tired and ashamed. Olivia in a bathroom on her wedding night screaming because her sister had brought human turbulence to a family event. Denise finally getting the spectacle she had spent years glamorizing. Jace probably leaving with somebody he met near the open bar. Nina crying not because she had lost me yet, but because the fantasy had failed so efficiently. And I thought about the quieter truth underneath all of it. Even if I took her back, I would never again be able to unknow what she had revealed. Every dinner with her family would contain that sentence. Every event would carry the memory of being edited out. Every apology would feel administrative. Every kind gesture would have an asterisk. Love cannot survive permanent self-surveillance. I said, yes. That's it. She made one last move then. The emergency move. The one people use when argument fails and shame starts closing in. She reached for my hand. I stepped back before she could touch me. The look on her face at that moment was the exact sound a door makes when it latches behind you and you realize you've been locked out. Please, she said. Please don't leave me like this. Like this. Interesting wording. I asked, how would you prefer to be left? Her eyes filled again. You know what I mean. I do. You want a softer consequence than the one you earned. She shook her head, crying openly now. I can't afford that apartment by myself. There it was. Not all of it. But enough. I didn't even feel angry anymore. Just finished. I said, call the leasing office. Or your mother. Or Jace. That's not funny. It wasn't a joke. Her face changed then. For a second the grief dropped and something rawer showed through, fear mixed with offense. You promised you'd take care of me. I stared at her. People tell on themselves in the worst moments. Not because they choose honesty. Because panic strips their editing. I said, I did. She blinked. I took care of you when you were drowning. I helped you get stable. I helped you finish school. I helped you get on your feet. I helped you become the version of yourself who now thinks she's too polished to stand next to me in public. Her lower lip shook. I continued, voice steady, almost gentle. That was my mistake. I thought I was building with you. Turns out I was just carrying you farther than you could have gone alone. She whispered, that's not true. I nodded toward the glass doors behind me. Then you'll be fine. I started walking back toward the building. She said my name sharply. I kept walking. She followed for a few steps. Evan, please. Just tell me what to do. That stopped me. I turned around slowly. What to do? For 2.5 years, that had been the assignment, hadn't it? Be the man with the answer. The one who knew the next step. The one who steadied the emotional table when everyone else knocked glasses over. I looked at her and felt, strangely, no triumph at all. Just the end of service. I said, figure it out. Then I went inside. Security held the door a little too long for me, clearly having pieced together enough from the lobby tension to enjoy the outcome in a discreet, professional way. I didn't look back. The next few weeks were noisier around me than inside me. Nina kept texting, though less often once she realized silence was the only response she was getting. Richard sent me one message 2 days later. "I'm sorry for all of it. You were the best man in the room and everyone knows it now." I replied, "Take care of Olivia." He sent back, "Already trying." Denise never contacted me, which was exactly right for her. People like Denise don't apologize downward. They simply revise their own memory until they become spectators to damage they helped create. Olivia actually did write once, late at night, 3 weeks after the wedding. It said, "For what it's worth, I'm glad you left. She didn't deserve how hard you tried." That one sat with me for a while. Because it came from the one person whose day had been detonated by somebody else's selfishness, and instead of asking me to help patch the family image, she gave me the cleanest gift possible, validation without agenda. Jace, as far as I heard, vanished again almost immediately. Which is what men like him do. They enter like weather and leave like debt. Nina lasted 6 weeks in the apartment before moving out. I learned that from the property manager, who called to confirm a forwarding address for deposit paperwork. Apparently her mother wanted her back home for a while. You can hear the humiliation in a phrase like that even when nobody says it out loud. A month later, Nina emailed me from a new address. Not texted. Emailed. That's how you know somebody has entered the final stage of collapse. They moved to more formal channels, as if better formatting might increase the odds of grace. The email was long. It talked about therapy. About patterns. About how she had mistaken adrenaline for connection. About how my steadiness had frightened her because it left her alone with herself. About how she had never had to examine certain parts of her own character until she watched me walk away without raising my voice. There were apologies in it. Some of them were even good ones. No, if you felt hurt. No, I was going through a lot. Fewer excuses. More ownership than I expected. And for a brief moment, reading it, I felt the old reflex tug at me. The impulse to reward honesty. The instinct to believe growth just because the language describing it sounded coherent. Then I asked myself the only question that mattered. If she had not lost the apartment, the family standing, the easy narrative, and the man who kept her life quiet, would this email exist? No. Growth that begins only after consequences are unavoidable may still be real. But it is not my job to stand there and verify it with my life. I wrote back one line. "I'm glad you're being honest with yourself. I wish you well." That was the last direct contact we had. About 4 months after the wedding, I ran into Richard. Ask anything, create anything. Speak.